Inshallah and Ashe. Blessings to you, my energetic beings, and welcome to Musing with Tanya D podcast. If you are new to my audio medicine room, I do a theme for each year. The theme for 2024 is community, networking, communication, storytelling, getting down to the nitty gritty in our bones. This comes from the Dagara cosmology, and of course, as a reflector in human design, I rein in other assets that I do reflect upon the environment around me. This year, we're going to embark on a captivating journey into the realms of ancient wisdom along with modern empowerment. I am your host, Tanya D. I am a practicing holistic shaman medium, an otherworldly life coach, and a subtle energetic surgeon, living my reflector design. I've come off the roof. I am thrilled to guide you through a tapestry of tales that intertwine the mystic threads of storytelling, energy, and empowerment through the lens of shamanism, indigenous technologies. And in each episode, we'll delve into the age-old art of storytelling, weaving narratives that transcend time and culture. From ancient myths to contemporary narratives, we'll explore the profound impact stories have on shaping our perceptions and empowering our lives. But this podcast is not merely a collection of tales. It's a conduit for energy, a source for inspiration, a beacon of empowerment. Drawing from the ancient practices of shamanism, we'll cover the transformative power of connecting with the unseen forces that surround us. Together, we'll unlock the secrets of energy, tapping into the vast reservoirs of vitality that lie within and around us. Join me as we embark on a quest for personal growth, spiritual enlightenment, and a deeper understanding of the world we inhabit. Get ready to be immersed in the enchanting world of storytelling, energy, and empowerment through shamanism. This is Musing with Tanya D podcast, where every episode is a step towards awakening the storyteller, harnessing the energy, and embracing the empowerment that lies within us all. Let the journey begin. This month's audio room artist is Nitin Bhatnagar. Dr. Nitin Bhatnagar is a holistic cardiologist. He's also an author, a motivator, teacher, healer. But as a cardiologist, he's actually trained in energetic medicine, Angelic Reiki, and even a soul empowerment life coach. He can assist you to empower your life to its highest vibrational potential by revealing your perceptions, reintegrating them to achieve balance, harmony, love. He is really dedicated to each person personally who's willing and committed to really undertake their own honorable, sacred journey of self-discovery and assist them as their guide. He lives an inspired destiny, and he actually offers the same to his guests. So with that, let's welcome Nitin Bhatnagar to my audio medicine room. Once again, how are you doing today, Nitin?
Lovely. Thank you for having me.
I'm excited to dive into the realms of our heart from a surgeon's perspective and love,
Yes.
right?
Yes, indeed. What is love?
What is love? I think
You know, we-
sometimes we've been conditioned that it's one thing and then it's another.
exactly. And we're coming into Valentine's, and here with Valentine's around the corner, we're off to go buy all sorts of goodies, right? We're off to go get chocolates. We're trying to get a vacation out of it. We're trying to make it as romantic as possible. And I thought we'd delve into the human behavioral side of it, as well as the quantum physics side of it, and we'll bring the two together to explore what is love.
Absolutely. It's going to be fantastic. So do you want to start with the quantum physics side first or the behavioral side?
I'll do the behavioral side because we're going to go from in to out and then expand it outwards.
Well, let's get started.
All right, cool. So, well, we walk around seeing various people. We are in relationships, whether in our home or whether at work, and we use this term "I love you" a lot, right? We use this term "I love you" for whatever it is that you're doing. However, are we always truly expressing that from our space of our heart? What is love? The other question to be really asking is, what is love not? And when we dive into the quantum physics part of it, that's how we'll uncover what is love not. So what is love? Well, we use it all the time. When we go to see somebody and we say, oh, I do love you, we become very infatuated. And the more infatuated we become, the more excited we become. Our hormones go up. We want to hold on to them. We want to kiss them. We want to hold them, et cetera, right? But the more infatuated we become, we're not aware of what else is going on in the background, in our unconscious. That's only our conscious side of it. Now, if we don't love somebody, remember, we have to keep an open perspective on what's going on, right? There are people who we don't love, right? So for those people who we don't love, we look down on them. We start resenting them. The more we start seeing this, we would create conditions. These are all occurring through our senses. We're processing motor and sensory through our bodies, goes through the brain to the pulvinar nucleus. It goes through our spinal cords all the way up to our brain. And we start living in our amygdala. And when we live in our amygdala, it's usually a polarized response. When we see other people, we want to be with them because we think that they are going to be better than us, because we're infatuated with them. Whether it is they are more wealthy than us, whether they are more educated than us, whether they are more good looking than us, right? On the same hand, people who we think are just the opposite, we want to stay away from them. We create these polarizations. Our senses are creating these conditioned states. Now, let's say if we get into the relationship, very soon after, we'll discover that they are either, they do all sorts of things that we don't like what they're doing. Let's say they leave their underwear on the floor, or their toothbrush is left on the countertop. They leave the toothpaste uncovered. They don't close the ketchup bottle. And these things kind of trigger us over and over again. Always simply is what's going on there is that we have created a conditioned concept about them, right? We're infatuated with them. But in actuality, life is showing us their other side that we are refusing to look at. We are just trying to look and see their one side that follows our values, but we're not following it with seeing who that person is in completeness. They are both a beautiful individual, yet also a individual who leaves their underwear on the floor. I'll just use that as a silly example. But in actuality, if we try to understand why we are getting resentful to what those feelings are that are being triggered to us, we start seeing a different person. The moment we start seeing a person in complete totality, we start reaching that state of love. Back in 1896, it was the father of experimental psychology, Wilhelm Wundt, if I remember correctly. He wrote all about a law called the law of contrast, where when we start seeing people for who they really are, it's called sequential contrast. So we'll see them for who they are now, and then we will start seeing their other side, because he discovered that there is always another side in somebody else. We start seeing their other side, and then we bring them together. We start seeing them as a whole being. That was sequential contrast. Then he created something called simultaneous contrast, which is if we can start seeing the person at the same moment, in the same instant, and they have both sides. Now you're achieving the state of love. You're achieving synchronicity. Now you bring that to physics for a second. Paul Dirac, 1947 physicist, nuclear physicist, he was talking about particles and antiparticles and trying to recreate them in the accelerators. Just like when we bring two particles together, they can create light, right? Similarly, if you have a positive emotion and a negative emotion, and you bring those together, you create enlightenment, because you can now see both sides of an individual. That is the state of grace. That is the state of unconditional love. So the most of the time we walk around as we would do, let's say, I'll give you an example to my kids. I'll say, oh, I love you. Just go take care of your bed, right? Just clean up your room, all right? I'll love you in a minute if you do that. But that's a conditioned response. The response I am invited to have, from a more balanced perspective, is whether you clean your room or not, I will still love you. Yet cleaning the room is an important task that I would like you to do for other reasons. That has got nothing to do with love. Unconditional state versus conditional state. And the problem is that we are living in our thoughts and living in this polarized field most of the time. We're charged particles. And this is going to be a recurring theme throughout as we keep on talking about and we bring this thing up to the quantum field. So when we're infatuated with somebody, we minimize ourselves. When we minimize ourselves, we exaggerate somebody else. When we resent somebody, we are trying to exaggerate ourselves, not them. We are always trying to do everything in relative to one another. We're either exaggerating or minimizing somebody relative to us or them. So when we're too proud to admit, when we see somebody and they're like, oh wow, they're amazing, they're fantastic, like a famous actor or a singer and so on, right? We believe that they're amazing, right? Except the problem is that we are too humble to admit that which is in them is also within us. And when we look down on somebody, let's say a coworker or to our spouse at a particular time or to children or whoever, right? In our family, whoever's in our circle, and we look down at somebody, we're too proud to admit that is within them is also within us. The problem is we live in deflective awareness. We're constantly pushing back and believing that they're the problem. This is the issue, and I'm not going to take any blame. And the more we go into that, we become deflective awareness instead of reflective awareness, versus seeing what is this person bringing to the table? Why am I being triggered? What are those triggers evoking in me? And being able to truly process those emotions and become more complete. And so therefore, what we try to do is we try to find a partner who will try to complete us, right? We thought of that phrase, right? We're looking for our soulmate. That's another phrase that is out there in the new agey world. We're looking for our soulmate. We're looking for someone to complete us. But in actuality, what we're looking for is the person who will trigger us the most so we can grow from that experience and be able to then become complete within ourselves. Now, imagine if you're able to create that for yourself and you find somebody who is also complete in all 7 areas of life. And those would be spiritually, mentally, physically, socially, in relationships, vocationally, and financially. These are the 7 areas that were discovered by the ancient Greeks. And if each individual is completely whole, now you don't have to worry about the fights or that the other person has to complete them, because each person is a complete individual. And from that space, have a loving relationship. That is the moment where you can start having unconditional love. Now, this is not just I'm talking about in a marriage. I'm talking about this on all levels, whether it is in the workspace, whether it is in the home with the kids, whether it is you're meeting somebody at a party, or whatever the case is. If you are complete and you are speaking from a space of love, of unconditional love, and you've discovered that there's nothing else that people are going to be triggering in you, you can now look for that relationship that is going to be more complete and wholesome. Now, we're going to keep on getting feedback mechanisms in our lives where we are not complete. When our psychology is out of balance, when we are either minimizing ourselves or minimizing others, or exaggerating ourselves and becoming prideful, or putting other people on the pedestal by exaggerating them, right? We keep going through this little seesaw of our emotions. When that happens, our bodies will create illness. So our psychology is connected to our physiology, and our physiology will bring about illness, out of balance wellness. And when that happens, we start having diseases. Now, if we ignore our diseases, or we ignore our illnesses, or whatever is going on in our lives, right? Might be some aches and pains or whatever, but we are invited to explore what's going on there. Our sociology comes in to basically say, hey, what's going on? You've got to get back into authenticity. That's an important word, authenticity. Because the problem is that when we start feeling that we are not authentic, we are not consciously aware of that. But all these mechanisms are showing us that that's the process going on. When we puff ourselves up, what happens? Someone comes and humbles us down, right? Usually it's our people who are closest to us, like our spouse or our partner or our children. Now, if we are feeling too down, what typically happens? Someone brings you up and starts cheering you up, right? If you're feeling malcontent. So when these imbalances happen, when the psychology imbalance occurs, the physiology takes over to show you where you're out of balance. When your physiology is out of balance, your sociology comes in to help you come back into authenticity. When your sociology is also ignored, what happens? Your theology comes in. By theology, I'm referring to universal circumstances, not religion. I'm talking about universal circumstances. So, for example, in my line of work, I'm seeing patients who have strokes or have heart attacks or serious illnesses. In the out world, people can have accidents, loss of a job, loss of a partner, loss of a loved one. All these kinds of things occur. But these are all occurring in some fashion to give us feedback, to bring us back into authenticity of who we truly are.
I call those energetic hiccups. The universe is like showing us where something's out of balance.
Yes, indeed. It's the slap upside the head, as it were, right? Just trying to bring us back into perspective. Now, on that same point, how are we going about looking at our lives, right? Our lives are being looked at through these lens of these innate values that we have. And I'm not talking about necessarily, but they've been conditioned too, but I'm not talking about necessarily the moral values, the social values, the religious values, the family values. I'm not talking about any of those values. Those, however, will certainly condition how we perceive life. But I'm talking about our innate values. These are the values that we are born with, and these are part of our divine blueprint. They are there for us to be able to express the soul in exactly what it is created to be. So, for example, I'll give you my example. My blueprint is that I am a teacher healer. And I do that in every possible way in all aspects of my life, whether it is whether I am at work as a cardiologist, whether I'm as a life architect, as a human behavioralist, whether I am in trying to help people teach them through functional movement, functional nutrition, meditation, breath work, whatever it is, every alternative techniques that I teach people, whatever it is, energetic medicine, whatever the case might be, my fundamental role is as a teacher, an educator, and as a healer. Now, whether that I also do through speaking or whether I do through writing, those are just modalities of transmission. But my point basically being is that is my blueprint. And as the more authentic I am to what I do, the less physiologic feedback I'm going to need to remind me to be authentic to what it is that I am designed and what I'm here to do. And sometimes it's a life journey for us to be able to figure that out. It takes us a whole lifetime to be able to see and put all the pieces together and see how everything and nothing was actually in the way of us becoming who we truly are going to become and who we are now. And you're thinking, wait a minute, what's this all got to do with love? Well, what is love not, right? It's all part of the same energetic field that we are in. We're all playing in this energetic field. So continuing on with that idea, when you have somebody who, I'll give you two examples. Let's say, for example, you have a mom who is walking in the mall, and the mom is just walking through the mall and looking at stores. She's pushing a stroller of the children. What does that mom typically see? That mom is able to see children's stores, looking for toys for children, looking for things to keep the child safe, and is constantly vigilant. Now, the dad, on the other hand, is walking, will completely ignore all the children's stuff, but except will be able to be focused and be able to see logical stuff in the left brain and be able to see, let's say, electronics or golf, if that's what they're interested in. It depends upon whatever the value is of the individual. Like for me, when I walk into a mall, for some reason, unconsciously, all I'm doing is scanning for bookstores because I love bookstores. I have a massive book collection. I read all the time, reading 5 or 6 books a week if I can. All I do is just sit and read and learn and study so that I can write and teach. So on that same point, when I walk into a store, like I was in New York. This was back around Christmas time, And we were walking along, and I found 5 bookstores that nobody in our little group of people who were walking saw. And I went to every single one of those bookstores. I said, sorry, I got to go here. I got to go here. But everyone was like, hey, I didn't know that we had a bookstore here. And they've been living there for so many years. My point being is that it is all depending upon the values and what we bring in. So now, why is that important? Because if we become too proud and puff ourselves up and we put somebody down, we will try to inject our values into them. You should do this. You should clean up this. You should go here. You should eat this, etc., etc. Now, if we find somebody who we admire, let's say a singer or an actor or whatever, what do? Well, we inject their values into us. So even if we don't care about for their song, we have to go to their concert. And what do? We give away money. We become more altruistic. So the more infatuated you are, eventually become narcissistic and prideful. The more resentful you are, eventually you become more altruistic, all stemming from guilt and shame. So the pride was created through guilt and shame. And at some point, we too, our body mechanisms will keep changing, and we will eventually try to become narcissistic unless we come to our steady state of balance. Only simply because it's just a feedback mechanism, just for us to be able to realize that we were putting somebody else on a pedestal and putting ourselves in the pit. These are beautiful feedback mechanisms that the universe has created, and we're always invited to keep exploring that. Now, on that same point, when we look at the whole world and we think, okay, well, something is missing. I want a relationship with so-and-so because there's something missing in me. There lies the ultimate fallacy, because there's actually nothing missing. The concept I'll give it as an example. I had a patient recently. We did our usual cardiology stuff. He was a trucker. He was in his 60s, and he had to give up being a trucker due to other ill health and so on. We ended up doing our usual annual cardiology visit and doing ultrasounds, and I was telling him about how his heart function is improving and so on. But he was still very down and quiet, and his wife was there. And I said, okay, what else is going on here? And so he said, well, I just kind of miss my life. I'm like, what do you mean? What do you mean? This is the first time we're talking about this. Explore. And so he started telling me about how much he missed his life as a trucker. I'm like, all right. And so I took off my cardiology hat and put my human behavioral hat on. And I started exploring that with him. What is it that we feel and perceive in your mind that you're missing? Well, he said that he missed the ability to be on an open road, the quiet, the complete silence. Okay, that was one. He missed the freedom. He missed traveling to different places. So I said, all right, so let's start exploring where you're getting that now. Well, we went through and we discovered that he likes to every day go into the forest by himself and chop wood. He loves doing that. When I showed him, and we went through in a very detailed process, and I showed him moment to moment to moment how he is attaining that same freedom that he got, the freedom of time, because no one disturbs him for like 2 hours while he's out there. He's getting the same freedom that he experienced while driving his trucks, as he did when he would be out in the forest. Same example when I went to the freedom of being able to do what he loves doing. No one's stopping him from doing it. The silence. In the forest, there's no one there to disturb him. It's just him and the wood and the axe and just the noise of that. That's it. And he loves that silence. Now that he's retired, his family is taking him on trips. They're going to New Hampshire, New York, North Carolina. They're taking road trips. So he's still traveling. So when I showed him how nothing in his life as a trucker has actually changed, it just transformed into a different form, he was in tears of gratitude. He realized that nothing was missing in his life. That is part of the quantum field of love, where nothing is missing, when you're in a state of unconditional love versus conditional love. We've all experienced it. when we have that moment of complete gratitude and grace for whatever's going on, whenever we're with somebody, right? We have that field and we enter that field, and that's your state of unconditional love. More on that unconditional love. Sorry, go ahead, please. Go ahead.
Well, too, it's perspective. In his mind, he thought that was just in the trucker world, right? The label he put to it. And then when you showed him, it's still there. It's just in a different form.
Right.
It was probably opened his eyes, a different awareness, right?
Yes. A reflective awareness, not deflective awareness.
Yeah.
Right. And when nothing was missing, he fell into that field of love. Love essentially has been defined as a synthesis, not an antithesis or a thesis, but a synthesis of complementary opposites occurring synchronously at all scales of existence. That is what I would say is the definition of love. When you are in your authentic nature, you are completely in the state of love. But
Well,
what we do,
go ahead. I said that's when time just flies by when you're in that flow state, right?
Yes, exactly. Then let's talk about that, because what happens typically is that when we are in a state of unconditional love, when we have that state of enlightenment, right, when our positive and negative emotions come together, we reach that center of balance, which opens up our heart to through gratitude and opens it up to love. We opens it up to the soul, opens that up to divinity and exploring the whole universe. When that occurs at a quantum level, what happens is that we've got all our molecules. We are all just vibrating molecules. We're vibrating cells, we're vibrating molecules, and at different frequencies and different densities. Just from a physiologic standpoint, when we have sympathetic hormones going through, right, because our sympathetic part of our nervous system is online, we've got a beta frequency. When our parasympathetic is online, we've got a more of an alpha, delta, theta frequency. That's your connection again to frequency. We are all essentially energy, vibration, and frequency. And so all these frequencies are constantly traveling throughout the universe at all scales and all dimensions as light. When we create density, those particles, right, those quantum particles, like the bosons and the muons and the quarks and so on, they come together and they create charge. The more they create charge, they create a heaviness. The lighter we are, the lighter those particles, the more massless they are, chargeless they are, timeless they are, they're shapeless, they're spaceless. All the major properties. And the closer you are to the nothingness, right, of all these forms without charge, you reach the state of unconditional love, which is that field. Just as to give you an example from a global perspective, if you look at the universe, we've been able to say that if we take all matter in the universe, all stars, all galaxies, everything, right, stardust, everything, and put it into together, it only actually comprises 4% of matter. The rest is nothing. There's nothing there. 96 of nothingness. Let's just call it nothingness for a second. Now you look in the body. You take, it's a lot of space. So if you take all that and put it together, 98% of the human body is nothing. Now you take a cell. If you look inside a cell, you've got your cytoplasm, you've got your DNA, you've got your centromeres, and all these other little particles in there, right? You remove all those particles, cell membrane, everything. All you really have inside that cell, right? Again, 98% of a cell is nothing. So, but what is this nothing? That's how I would like to define consciousness, from a cellular to an atomic to a galactic, universal, cosmic scale. That nothingness is what I would think as consciousness, God, source, love. It's a field of intention. And some call it the Higgs boson field. So that's how we're entering our quantum talk, where when we're still charged about something or the other, we've created this thing called quantum entanglement. You've heard of that, the spooky action at a distance. No matter what distance another particle is at, it will create a vibrational twang. Well, again, of course, because now we know there's actually nothing there in between to stop it. And whether it is a centimeter away or thousands of miles away, what you do to this particle, it will affect this particle, which is exactly the same in human emotions and in partnerships. That's why when we have a loved one who is extremely far away, or a deep friend, right, a deep relationship friend who we have, something is going on with them. What ends up happening is that we feel it at some level. Then we pick up the phone and say, hey, you okay? What's going on? Usually parents and children have it, spouses have it, or deep friendships that have been over a lifetime, sometimes siblings, who, as long as they've been very close, all these different kinds of relationships, because they're all part of a quantum field. The heart has a 5,000 times stronger quantum electromagnetic field than the brain does, because every single cell in our body is vibrating at a particular frequency, ergo generating some kind of vibrational field, ergo some kind of EMF. And with almost 8 billion people on the planet, we look at all the number of trees that we have, the rocks, the minerals, the crystals, the animals, etc. Everything is generating a field, right? From the soil to the air to everything is generating a field. And we are constantly swimming in this quantum soup. And it depends upon how open our heart is to be able to receive somebody else's signal, or is it closed? Another example of that is, and I'm sure you've experienced it as a mom, when you've put your baby to sleep, and you're like, oh, thank God they're asleep. And now you tiptoe backwards very slowly, and you try to step out of the room. But for some reason, the moment you put your foot outside that door, the baby cries. And you're like, oh, come on. And then you just rush back in and pacify the baby, or give him a hug. No, honey, I was right here all along. I never left. Well, the reason is most likely is because the fact that the baby that's always been in the womb, or even next to a caregiver, the baby's electromagnetic field from its heart space has intersected with the heart space of the adult, or the caregiver, whether it's a parent or even, for that matter, a very close sibling who is always with them. And suddenly, when that separation occurs and that heart space moves away, their heart is moving off in this direction, and the baby's heart is still sitting in the crib, right? The electromagnetic fields separate ever so slightly, and the baby feels it. Same thing when we walk into a room. We don't even have to say a word. We just walk into a bar, and we know who we're going to gravitate towards and who we're going to stay the heck away from, right?
Absolutely.
That's all part of being inside that field of intention, that Higgs boson field, that space, that nothingness, which some would call love. That's how I would define love, because nothing in that field is missing. And the whole purpose of this field is simply for us to get back into authenticity of who we truly are. How do we start all this stuff? Is by simply working at and looking at what is triggering us.
So do you ever see triggers as growth periods? Like maybe you're in a relationship and your partner's not growing, so they trigger you because they keep doing the same thing day in, day out. They're not willing to change an aspect of themselves.
Right, but that's also because there's still aspect. There's a fractal of that trigger that you haven't owned and found grace for in yourself, which is therefore they're not transmitting. I have yet to have a client or someone to work on who, or even patient who has worked on that. Once you transform it at your level, right? So let's say if it's in a couple relationship, and this is the client, and this person I'm not even working on, but I know what's going on, right? Until this person is completely transformed in a state of grace and gratitude, They don't have any trigger about that, whatever that thing that person is. This person suddenly up levels because it's natural. It's like quantum entanglement. When one particle expands, the next particle has to go and transform. Now, does it work for the, if you're asking about myself? Absolutely. Whenever I see a trigger and I work on it myself, if it still hasn't completed, it's because there's a fractal of that I have not explored. I was looking at it differently, and I haven't completely looked at the whole picture. There's another little nuance in there that needs tweaking. But the moment that's tweaked, the problem solves. Yeah, another silly little example is, when with a little baby. I remember we did this with our son when he he was very famous for picking up the peas and throwing it across the room when he was sitting at the dinner table. So this would obviously trigger myself and my wife, and we would simply, when we realized and we had these levels of awareness, we would stop, figure out what the trigger was, because invariably what the problem was that we ended up having this trigger when we were the same age, but we hadn't cleared up all that mind noise. So when we cleared it up, it was interesting. He stopped doing that behavior. We didn't have to tell him, don't do this or stop it, whatever. He just stopped doing it. And it was instantaneous. The moment we both processed whatever was going on for ourselves, he stopped doing it. So the joke is that children will express that which we as parents will repress.
Oh, absolutely. For sure. Definitely.
And same thing even with the people who we love the most with, because why else would we have this closest network, whether it's parents, spouse, or children, or deep relationship friends, right? Anybody closest to our circle, closest to our electromagnetic field, will trigger us the most. And the more we're able to fix it within ourselves, and by fixing it, it's not like there's something wrong with us. There's nothing wrong with us. It's just finding the missing part of the information that's in our awareness, or rather it's absent in our awareness. We just need to bring it in, that we awaken ourselves to the next level of enlightenment. Again, enlightenment, right? Light when we bring in two opposite poles particles.
No, it totally makes sense.
Because in the end, what's happening is that the seer, the seeing, and the seen are the same. And now we are understanding this in quantum physics, where the past, the present, and the future are all happening simultaneously. But the seer, the seeing, and the seen are the same. We're all just one. Reflective awareness, not deflective awareness.
So how do you see this changing over this new year?
For people, or in what way?
Yeah, for like globally, for people, humanity.
Well, I think we had our important celestial mark when COVID started, right, on our timeline. So when COVID started, that was a good opportunity for reset, for people to start thinking about what is it that they want in a relationship, what does they want financially, what does they want for themselves, do they really want to be in that job, what do they want physically for themselves, how do they want to stay healthy. And as a collective, it was an opportunity for us to be able to grow. Those who didn't grow withered away and perished, whether it is through dying, or whether it is through their relationships, or whether it is through their jobs, or whatever the case might be, financially, socially, spiritually, mentally, physically, whatever the case might be. Those who embraced it and saw that this was an opportunity to grow, ask ourselves the important questions, use those questions wisely to awaken ourselves, flourished. Those who did not perished.
That what you resist persists.
Yes. Right? Remember the Delphi Oracle, right? The Delphi Oracle said, know thyself. That was the opportunity. Know thine self, know others. That is how one would grow. So back to your question. It started off with COVID. We're going through some major upheavals on a global scale at the moment. And people need to stop, pause, reflect, and ask the right questions. The quality of a reality is based on the quality of questions you ask. Because that basically will open up the universe unto itself. It will open up consciousness to itself. It will open up you to yourself. And the more we ask the quality questions, the more likely that we are able to understand our surroundings, ourselves, and become more authentic. If each person becomes truly authentic to who they truly are, shine the light that's within all their selves by becoming completely balanced upon their path, this would be a much brighter world. And that's not a
Absolutely.
fantasy. It's a quantum reality. It's a quantum truth. That's what we're all striving for. Our physiology is striving for that very nature, for us to become completely in balance, in grace, gratitude, with state of unconditional love.
So do you have like a favorite question that you ask yourself about the quality of your life? Like, do you have like your top question?
Yeah, every morning I get up, and as I'm driving to work, usually, it is how am I going to be able to most effectively and efficiently help the most number of people today with the gifts and talents that I have available given to me by source. And then I wait for a response. And the second part of that thing is with gratitude, I reply back and saying, I may not have all the answers today, but I will be given the information that I need to be able to help as many people as possible and be able to heal as many people as possible, teach as many people as possible by source.
I love that it's in your morning drive. So are you like me and you listen to the sound of silence in the car, or do you have like, are you listening to a podcast? You're listening to Audible or just listening to the road?
So you most of the time is complete silence. It starts off in the morning. My ritual is I will go through various affirmations after a meditation already. I will then make some quick phone calls if I have to. And then right after that, it's silence.
Yeah, I just wondered. I don't listen to music or anything in the car. I like the sound of silence, and I find it kind of other people with me, it kind of agitates them because
Yeah,
like I don't like the noise, like whatever it is, unless I'm specifically going somewhere like a concert or whatever to listen to the music. But
right.
I just was curious if your ride to the office had like the sound of silence in the car, like with
I
yourself.
yeah, completely, and I love it because that it gives you enough of a pause to be able to keep yourself poised and centered as I'm about to now walk into the office and enter everyone's energetic field, whether it's the staff or whether it's the patients. I'm gonna bring it on to me, but I'm not absorbing it. I am interacting with it. When I
Well, and
did
you're
not have this level of awareness, I was always just banging against their energetic fields, not knowing that I was doing that, taking on all this stress and so on, and not realizing what was going on until I discovered how to this level of awareness. And also, even whether I'm with patients or whether I am with my staff or whatever the case might be, I am constantly seeing what and anything that is triggering me, and finding it within myself and cleaning up right there and then. Remember that thing about sequential contrast versus simultaneous contrast. Think of it this way: if you have a top and you've got two colors to the top, and you spin it slowly, you will still see the various two colors as they're spinning, right? But you spin it fast enough and at such speed that all you see is white. Same kind of example. If you're able to see both sides of whatever's triggering you, both sides of a trait simultaneously, so quickly, there's a state of enlightenment that you're no longer triggered in that moment. And the more and more you do this, the more balanced you are, the more centered you become. So, and it's a habit. It's a habit that you are invited to practice to be able to get to that level. But it's anybody and everybody can do this. That's the beauty of it.
absolutely. Is there anything else your heart wants to share with my listeners?
No, essentially, each of us are being pushed to be the most authentic version of who we are.
Absolutely.
And
So
and no matter what you do or you do not do, we're all still worthy of love.
I I find that maybe people have a hard time knowing really how to love themselves first, which is actually at the nucleus of it all, right? Self-love.
Exactly. Yep.
Then you radiate that love outside of yourself.
Love yourself, and then once you've been able to truly love yourself unconditionally, now you can offer it to others.
Absolutely. Well, thank you, Nitin. It's been a pleasure and a treasure as always.
Well,
I
thank you
will
for having me.
have all of Nitin's info in the show notes, and I will see you on the other side. Ashe, blessings.
Blessings. Thank you.
If this episode inspired you in some majestic, magical way, please take a screenshot of you tuning in on your device and post it to any of your social channels, tagging Tanya D, the Tanya D. And if your heart is curious, needs some guidance as you are at a crossroads, schedule a divination, a one-on-one session, or learn from me. I have a plethora of online offerings to spark your inner intuitive essence, changing lives, igniting passions on the information highway while awakening the spirit. Once again, Ashe, and as always, I will see you on the other side. Blessings.